Hey there guys, Luz here again, and now in my last video we showed you how to melt about 10 cans of aluminum or so into a nice pretty cool chunk of aluminum. Unfortunately, this little bit of aluminum won't really do much. It's just a kind of a cool little trinket, can be done, right? Now if we want to actually melt enough aluminum, we need to have something that will continue to be able to melt and resist it. The other unfortunate part of this is, in our last video, we saw that the flower pot that I was using as the actual furnace spot didn't exactly survive very well. So it's kind of like a one-time use, emergency, I need something, will go one time, but I won't really resist too much longer. Unfortunately, continuing to buy these will probably get fairly expensive. So we need to come up with a more stable and more durable solution. Now I did try a couple different things, for example, a barbecue. I did borrow my parents' barbecue. Probably shouldn't have, but once again, that didn't work out too well. Now my idea there was the barbecue itself was meant to resist a lot of heat, right? That's what it was created for, created to resist a nice charcoal heat, able to cook meat, yum yum. So why not, if you just blow a cup of air into it, why wouldn't it be able to actually get hot enough to be able to melt the aluminum? What I wasn't counting on is the fact that because the surface is so big, it actually dissipated the heat so much. So what I ended up with is pretty much this. It was able to actually get hot enough to melt aluminum, however, it wasn't hot enough to keep it melted too long. So once I pulled the crucible right out of the fire, it just solidified right away. So I got a nice little chunk of aluminum in it. Unfortunately, all the slag and everything stayed with it. I wasn't able to actually separate it, and unfortunately, this is very unusable. So we need to come up with a more stable solution. So that's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to actually try and create an actual furnace that we can actually use, and we'll be able to withstand more than just one heating. So let's hope we don't burn down the house, right? Again, blame it on the duck, right? Alright guys, so here are the materials we're going to be using today to make our aluminum foundry. So let's start on this corner. Obviously duct tape, you'll see why in a second. I got a couple U-bolts over here. They are steel and stainless steel. Make sure that they're stainless steel because the zinc plated ones, they're going to probably melt with the heat. This is just pretty much a normal bucket that comes with a plant inside or anything like that. Like after you transplant the plant, it's really good to just reuse it. It comes in pretty much any hardware store. Now, this is going to be the outside of our foundry. It's going to be a actual steel bucket. It's a 10-quart steel bucket. You can get it pretty much at any hardware store. Pretty good to go. All right, over here we have the materials that we're actually going to use to line the inside of it. We have plaster of Paris and clay sand. Now the plaster of Paris, you can get it again at any hardware store. Between the two of them is about 20 bucks. The plaster of Paris, you probably find it at the paint section. That's usually where they have these, is for wall patching and things like that. We're going to use a little bit different use for it today. And of course the clay sand, which you can get it in pretty much different areas of that store. The most common area though, right next to the concrete and things like that, is it is very commonly used to mix it with different concrete mixes and things like that to have different things. So we're going to combine all of these in a recipe that I found online and see if we can get an awesome little metal foundry. Let's see what happens. Now in the steel bucket, I had already mixed in about 15 cups of sand and 15 cups of plaster. Then I added in about 5 cups of water and mixed it all together really well so that everything was uniformly mixed together and no lumps were there. You have to work really fast because you only have about 15 minutes for that mixture to set in. Alright guys, as you can see, the plaster is already pretty much set. It's going to take about an hour for it to completely dry off anyway, so we're just going to wait over here. However, since it's actually hardened enough already, I'm going to try and take this out. We're going to need to actually pull it out. One of the reasons why I chose this bucket, which is really nice and soft, is because any other bucket, this is going to be really difficult to pull out. So it's really easy that it can collapse on one side, and you can just kind of pull it out by twisting it a little bit. You can see as it comes out, we're actually going to have a pretty good, fairly solid center over here. It's nice and smooth. We're going to be able to actually use this as the actual burning center. We're just going to be able to have the coals down here, and then our crucible, remember the steel crucible, could fit right in here perfectly fine as it heats up. We're going to have to still drill a hole in this to actually make sure that the air pipe goes into it and gets blown into it so it can get really, really hot. All right, so let's wait until this dries, and then let's go ahead and make that that hole. Alright guys, so as you can see, the plaster and sand mix has already cured fairly well. It's been set up for about an hour or so in the Florida sun, which usually cooks things really, really quickly. It's summer in Florida, really, really hot. So it's actually really nice and cured, really nice and hard. The inside is really, really smooth, giving it a really nice professional look, as I said before. Now again, having a professional look and actually working as a professional stove are two completely different things. So we'll definitely get to that point in a little bit. But at least it looks professional, so hey, something, right? Now, of course, as I said before, what's going to be burning in here is going to be coal, right? This is going to be a coal-powered furnace. Unfortunately, coal by itself will never get hot enough to actually melt aluminum. Aluminum requires about 1200 degrees or so to really melt it out, probably about 1300 degrees. So we're going to actually need to create a little bit more. So how do we do that? We add air into it. We add a lot of air blowing into it, and it's going to get really, really nice and hot in there. So the way that we're going to do that is, as you can see, the plaster itself ends right around this raised edge right over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure a little bit below that raised edge, maybe an inch or so below, so right around here. We're going to drill a hole right here and then downwards at an angle so that it can actually hit right before the bottom of that. So we can insert this galvanized steel pipe. Again, steel is not going to melt, so that's why we want the steel pipe in there, which is about an inch. So we need to make it a little bit bigger than an inch hole. The reason why we're going to put it at an angle is so that if the crucible ever fails, which is a complete possibility, it will actually, instead of putting it all down the pipe and clogging up your pipe, what's going to happen is the pipe is at an angle, so it won't really matter. It will just go to the bottom, and it's a lot easier to clean up if it needs to be cleaned up. And it won't clog up your pipe, so you don't have to recreate a lot more of the stuff. You only have to recreate the lining on the inside if that is ever to happen. So that's going to be the thing. So that's what we're going to do next. Let's see how that works out. Alright guys, so now we have our air hole in here. Now what I used for this was a 1.5 inch hole dowser. And now the reason for the 1.5 inch hole dowser is because I found that with this 1.5 inch, the pipe that we're actually going to be using to put in here is going to be a 1 inch galvanized steel pipe. And that is this beauty right over here, right? You want it to be galvanized steel because, once again, you don't want the steel to melt as you're melting in there. Steel will actually hold the whole thing together. That's why I'm saying it's really important for it to be steel. Now, once this actually goes in there, it's going to go in here fairly well. It's going to be able to come in here at an angle. It's going to rest inside. Let's look into the inside. It's going to look right in there, blowing out air into the coals that are going to be in there. Now this still needs to actually cure a little bit longer, so that's what we're going to set it up to do. So with this, we're able to pump in first through the metal. Once at the metal, we put it at an angle and started digging downwards so that it can create a downward kind of spiral. So we're going to have the air coming in here, firing in here. Now, of course, all that heat is just going to dissipate outwards. So what we need to create next is a lid to put right on top of here to be able to hold the heat in there, but with a hole in the center to be able to do one of two things. One, to be able to actually let the pressure that may be built up in here out, and secondly, to be able to actually have enough of a hole that we can actually dump the cans in there so that it can actually melt without us having to lift the lid. That way less and less air we're getting here from out here, less heat will escape, and we're able to actually like have the most amount of heat so we can melt them out faster. Alright, so let's see how we're gonna do that next. Alright guys, so we are making our lid now. Now I've used a common bucket, just a nice plastic bucket, to actually make the mix in and actually make the lid in there because it's going to be a nice round shape at the very bottom. What I've actually used here is a modified version of the original mix, which is going to be 5 cups of plaster, 5 cups of sand, and only 2 cups of water this time. So the mix is now being made inside. As you can see, the mix is nice and it's kind of like a paste right now, so it needs some time to cure up. I've used the U-bolts to be able to have the lid, so once it solidifies, this is going to be a nice lid to be able to lift in and out. And now in the center over here, to create the chimney spot, I have filled this container with water. It's just a little bit bigger than a normal soda can, so it's going to be able to give us that ability to vent out the heat, vent out pressure, but at the same time be able to actually throw cans straight in there. So that's going to be a chimney hole. And now we're just going to give it about an hour to cure or so, and then we'll see. We'll come back and see. Alright guys, as you have seen, I've gone ahead and taken the lid right out of the bucket. Now I have to wriggle it out a little bit to be able to get it free from the bucket, because I think it stuck a little bit in the bottom of the bucket. However, it was fairly simple to get it out once you wiggle it out a little bit. It did leave this really smooth surface, really nice. Also, I've gone ahead and taken out the center jar over there from that center chimney, leaving a really nice chimney hole right here where we'll be able to dump in the cans without having to lift the lid. Now, the lid, once it's finished being cured, it still takes a little bit of time before it gets cured. However, it's already fairly strong, so we can demonstrate this. Now, once it sits right up here, it's going to be able to give us that, as I said, that hole to be able to throw the cans without having to lift the lid. It's also going to allow the pressure to leave, but not too much heat, as the hole is a lot smaller than the actual chamber in there. And now, as we see, we have our entire furnace finished over here. The only part of the furnace that we need to talk a little bit about is the actual hole, the blower pipe. Now, it's galvanized steel in one end. Over here in the center, it's just a female joiner, so we can join it in with the PVC piping. Now, the galvanized steel in the very end over here is going to fit inside here. It's going to go right at an angle. It's going to sit right in there at an angle, blowing in air towards the inside. It's galvanized steel once again, so that it doesn't melt with the heat that's going to produce in there. Then the PVC piping over here, just to make it lightweight. So once it is done, it should be able to blow in air with a hair dryer right over here. We'll be able to actually blow in air right in here, goes through, goes in there. The reaction will get really hot, and we'll be able to just dump the cans on the top and melt it out. Now, of course, the only thing that's left to be seen is whether it works or not. So we're going to go ahead and try that out on the next video. We can melt out a couple more aluminum cans or blow something up.